Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
My name is Steve G. I'm recovering from the life I used to live, and this is my story on Inside Addiction. Growing up for me, let me see, I didn't realize it was dysfunctional probably until I was about 11 years old. It just didn't seem odd to me that my father wasn't really there for like family functions and everything, but I found it, comfortable to seek him out when at times when my father was an alcoholic. So I didn't really get that, like I said, until I was about 11 years old, and the family made us think about it per se. But up until then, it seemed normal that he would go to work, come home, be drunk, my mother would yell, and I would play with my toys, and then after she'd get done yelling with him, I would go seek him out in his world, which would be on the couch. I'd go curl up in his cubbyhole and spend time with him. I mean, that's how I got close to my father throughout pretty much my early mental growing stages. Then I started really wanting to be closer to him more than I already was, and try to maybe understand and bond with him by occasionally taking sips of his beer. My father was a beer drinker. And then he turned into vodka. But growing up, it was dysfunctional, but then it wasn't. Maybe I made sense of it. I have a younger brother who I couldn't stand while I was growing up. I hated him. He always wanted to play with my toys and break them. So I kind of, exiled him from my room per se. We never really owned a house. Now I understand there was a lack of financial stability with the alcoholism. I played sports, I did well until I got into junior high school. That's when I really started experimenting, drinking with my father. And got introduced, I met a friend of mine who was really heavy into marijuana at 13 years old. He'd come from that whole stoner family, so that kind of welcomed me, which made a perfect fit. Let me see. Hated my brother. Really didn't really get along with my mother too much because she was she was angry. Now I understand she was very, very angry. Growing up, living with an alcoholic and having that whole dysfunction, it just didn't seem, I'm surprised she stayed as long as she did. After, let me see, going to 11, some parts are really hazy, but junior high is when I really got into really using. I'm really getting away from being athletic. I played sports. I was a football guy, baseball guy. Welcome to the wonderful world of, addiction. Childhood. Let me see here. Teenage years. Started dabbling at the age of 13 with the marijuana and the alcoholism. Still was in school. My grades were declining. Wasn't putting out on the team. Played football, baseball. Prior to really using heavy, made the all-star team. Definitely in baseball. Babe Ruth. Played any position. Excelled well. Probably could have got a scholarship. I really didn't favor the addiction world. But really set off probably 15, 16 when I really started thinking that I could do and make money with this particular thing, because my parents, they really weren't, the wealthiest people, perhaps even have any wealth at all, struggling with the addiction and never really owning a home. In fact, to my understanding, never owned a home. Like I said before, always moving, so it was difficult. 15 years old was my first arrest. School dance, bought some marijuana. After the dance, usually what the kids do is they go to like McDonald's and Burger King and then the bowling alley type of thing after the school dance. And I had some marijuana and I didn't want to hide it in my pocket, so I hid it in my deodorant. And naturally, I think a fight or something broke out and the police were called, and I got nervous. And I hid the marijuana inside of the top of the deodorant cap, and the police that were there observed this, and I tried to put it on a vehicle about 10 feet away from me, and naturally that was really very suspicious. And so the officers came over, and next thing you know, I believe that was one of my first arrests. 15, that was more like a youthful thing. Parents got called, disappointed. But that didn't stop me. I kept going. By this time, I'm smoking weed every day. Alcohol really wasn't my big thing. I did it if my father had beer in there, if I didn't have any marijuana. But I really, really liked the effects of marijuana, how it made me feel. It made me feel numb, so I didn't really have to focus on feeling anything. At this time, I knew it was dysfunctional in my home. It just wasn't right that my mom would scream and my dad would drink, and I didn't like my brother. And these things, some of my other friends didn't have these problems. 16 years old, I tried cocaine for the first time. That was an experience. I was nervous and scared, but I tried it, but I liked it. It made me feel almost like a superhuman. And, I dibbled and dabbled with that for a little while. And then I found myself at 17 years old in rehab. Heavily smoking marijuana, cocaine. I started selling cocaine prior to my being in the rehab and using it, and this became a problem. By this time, I quit school, and I needed some help. I knew I needed help. This was not normal for me, and I knew my life was fastly crashing hard. So I went to rehab at 17 years old. I remember it all now. 17 years old, went to rehab in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, a place called the Terraces. And this is where I learned to actually deal with some feelings and say to myself that I actually want to do something different with my life. Interesting story too is that, I mentioned that my father was an alcoholic, and at this time, he was heavily into his addiction, and he actually came and entered the facility too as a patient as well. Maybe I inspired him to want to come in and do something differently, and I was happy about that. I didn't have any feelings of, oh, how the hell can you be in here? You're my dad. I was actually really, really happy that he was in the rehab with me, because we were doing something, trying to change and get rid of these things that were hurting us.
He came into rehab the same time you did, so you and your father went to rehab together?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was pretty powerful for me. And I remember it was a 28-day program, and at the end of 28 days I didn't want to leave, because I didn't want to go back to the way I was living, because I knew how tempting it was, and the neighborhood I was in really wasn't all the best of neighborhoods growing up in Schenectady. I had to go home. He still stayed there for a little while, and I went home, and I believe I used again. I didn't have enough strength or will, or who does at 17 years old? So I ended up asking my mother to go back to the facility, because I loved it there. If I could live there forever, I probably would at that time. So I could only go back for a week, because that's all insurance would pay for. And then I had to come home and really face this battle, for the next upcoming years. And my father, fortunately and unfortunately came home and, was doing well for a short period of time. They realized that, their marriage was over with my mother. So that was kind of a shocking blow. Gets clean, comes home, the marriage is over, and here you go, we're on the brink of a divorce, and I'm 17, my brother's 13, so I mean we're dealing with this, and at this time I just says I'm gonna really do me, and I actually left home, got my own apartment, hustling in the street, selling drugs, and I did this for the next 3 years until I was 21 years old, and I decided that this is really not what I want to do in my life anymore. And the pain, the drugs, the use, there wasn't any arrest within that 3-year period until 21 years old, when I was heavily strung out on cocaine. I mean, I became my own best, customer. I get it, mix my stuff, think I'm selling, and selling to me. I'm in the hole, I'm owing people money, and at this time I got fears that I'm gonna get hurt, and I decided that it would be best for me to leave New York. So, with this insane thought pattern, I decided to go visit a friend of mine who I actually worked for here, when I was younger, in Atlanta, Georgia. Maybe there's an opportunity for me there. So I get on the bus to go down to Atlanta, Georgia, and I had a pistol. I brought my pistol with me, and I had some marijuana, a couple grams of marijuana with me. And I remember getting off the bus in Baltimore, Maryland, and I wanted to get high. It's a long bus ride, and I'm an addict. So I got off the bus, I went on the side of the building, and I'm rolling my blunt, and I remember this man comes up to me and goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean what I'm doing?" "I'm rolling a blunt." And he said, "Oh yeah?" So he lets me roll my blunt. Interesting, right? And he says, "Why don't you give that to me?" I said, "What do you mean give this to you?" I said, "I'm not giving this to you." I said, basically, if you want to get high with me, you can. He said, "No, give that to me right now." And here you go, he pulls out his badge. He said, "Give that to me right now. Place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest." I said, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" I said, I'm on my way. Take what I got. This is what I got. But that wasn't good enough for him. Got my baggage off the bus. Next thing you know, searches my bags. There's my loaded pistol. Now I'm going away. So I served a little bit of time in Baltimore, Maryland. What an experience. That was my first time actually being in the penal system of that nature. Being in a cell, being in a gallery, having all those feelings of, oh my God, this is not where I want to be. A living hell in itself, and being 21 years old, scared, thinking I was a tough guy when I'm actually not. So I served a little bit of time.
How long did you go for?
I was there for 37 days, got released, and then came home. Moved in with my father, who was still, an active addiction. At this time, him and my mother were divorced, and he had a new partner. So, I stayed with them for a little while, trying to get on my feet, get a little part-time job. That didn't work out too well because I was used to making more money than just what they were paying me at my part-time job. So I got back into the lifestyle, selling all over again. Eventually I had money, got my own apartment, doing drugs, heavy cocaine, my own best supplier, fit right in like it was waiting for me. I came right back, it was waiting for me, got right in.
Didn't skip a beat.
Didn't skip a beat, 23 years old, heavily addicted to cocaine, marijuana, drink occasionally, thinking I was some type of mobster or something of the sort. And that's when it really took a turn for me. I had violent tendencies, take what I want type of thing. Just no remorse at the particular time. Hurting my family. I know I was hurting my family. Very, very distant. Just a very bad time for me. 23 years old. I ended up dating a woman who was just as toxic as I was in the lifestyle, and it became very violent and abusive. And one night I thought that I was again a mobster. Got in a fight with a couple men. I came back with my rifle, fired a couple rounds, and next thing you know, I'm incarcerated. This time, a lot more time. I found myself in the care and custody of the Department of Corrections with New York State with 3.5 interim sentence and 5 years parole. Prison was a world outside of the world that I've ever known. Fear, loneliness, guilt. I had to feel these feelings that I wouldn't feel before because I was using. I was 1,000 miles away from home, surrounded by 2,000 inmates in there, and I felt completely alone. Naturally, all the stories I've ever heard about prison, I was terrified. I mean, 23 years old, kid. All the stories I've heard, especially not being, I don't consider myself to be not too shabby looking. Maybe I would be somebody's fresh meat in there, I'm not sure. And and I managed to grow a little bit this time. Learning a little bit. I got into the weights, thinking that if I was big, people would mess with me and I would be intimidating. Actually, I didn't really know anything about anything. I had a few fights when I was younger, but nothing really substantial to make a mark. I ended up finishing my term, coming home 2004, and thinking, misleading myself, but this is disease, how sharp and cunning it is, thinking that I got things under control. I'm not going to use this time. I'm actually going to try and work, but that became another addiction for me. I worked, I think, 2 to 3 jobs, tried to start my own little landscaping business, and became a workaholic. So I just flipped one addiction for the other, and not giving myself any breathing room. That didn't work out too well. Ended up using. Funny thing is that I thought that I could just use one time every now and then, and that was the biggest trick I ever played on myself. 90 days later, I found myself, highly addicted to cocaine all over again. Smoking marijuana, and I violated my parole. And I actually called my parole officer and told them, and I was too ashamed or whatever to turn myself in, and I ended up absconding from parole, going on the run, and 90 days later they found me, and I was rearrested and incarcerated all over again for another year and a half, and this is where it really, really, really began to sink in on me, because at this time I'm 27 years old, and things are happening. I mean, some of my friends I went to high school, by then they're almost finishing college, moving on with their lives, and here I am, GED. This is be my third time, second time in the penitentiary, history of these minor arrests and misdemeanors, and what am I doing with my life type of thing. Yeah, I know how to lift weights, but mentally there was no substance there. But then I really began to think, and this is where the magic began to happen, as I like to call it. Started reading. Never was a big reader, hated school. So I decided to read. What I was reading first, fantasy novels, to just get myself in the habit of reading something. And I became intrigued by reading, and I got into real estate, and I was reading about self-help, leadership. I have a wealth of knowledge about active addiction. I consider myself to be a mathematician, because all the, mathematical equations you need to do to buy the product, multiply, cut, distribute, and how you're going to make your money. So I was very, very good with numbers. So I started saying, well, I have some skills, and I can use these skills in a positive form. But I want to do something that has a profound impact. And I remember being in this one particular program, and men and women used to come into the facility and talk about sharing this strength and hope, and how they used to be where I am and what they're doing now, and you can give back. And I said, man, I could do that. I could help people who are like me, because I know now that I need help, that I couldn't do this on my own. So by the time from 11 to 27 years old, all them years being in and out of jail and using, that's pain. I don't want anybody to go through that pain, and if I can make a difference in doing something, I will. So I continued to study and continued to lead, and I actually got involved with some men in prison who were actually facilitating programs. And that intrigued me, and the feeling that I got from doing that was very, very powerful. And then I made the decision that this is my purpose, that this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to help people. I'm supposed to get up and talk to people and tell them what happened to me, and I'm supposed to give them information, education, so they can do the things that I didn't do, or if they're searching for a way out. Because I remember I used to look in the mirror and I used to see confusion and limbo in my own eyes, going, where I'm in this tornado, I don't know how to get out. Can somebody take my hand? I need some help. So upon leaving the penitentiary this time, completing my term, coming home, being on parole again, and I remember the backlash that I got from the some of the parole officers in the office. And you know, I have to tell you that their backlash, and what I mean is kind of like, Gallietta, you're a piece of crap, and you were this and you were this, where you before. It kind of inspired me this time with the motivation that I already had to say, you know what, I'm going to prove something to everybody here. You know, that I'm not that person anymore, and I'm going to make a difference. And I did. I decided to, you know, well, first I had to get a job coming home from parole, and then I had to decide what area of schooling I needed to go into to, you know, get this education I needed to go in. Yeah, I could talk to people about drugs all day long, but I know it's just more than that. I need some skills. So I got involved in going to school and you know, getting my my KSAC, furthering forward, and then going to school to go for my bachelor's in psychology. You know, to understand not only how the human brain works, but to give some people help. You know, I want to help people. Plus, I also went to school and got certified to be a certified personal trainer, because all the years I was incarcerated, I love to exercise, and I've trained a wealth of people without any credentials or certification. So someone says to me today, hey, you know, why don't you just go get certified? It makes more sense. And that made sense to me. So I went and took the time to go to school and get my certification, and you know, trying to help people make a difference. You know, health and wellness, the whole package. You know, heal and move forward. Okay, major setbacks that I can remember. 2006, I remember when I was incarcerated. This is my second incarceration, the part where I was actually doing well and doing some work. I got a call down to go to the chaplain's office, and now when you get a call down to the chaplain's office, I mean, it's never positive. They don't just call you down there and say, hey, I want to see you just for nothing. I knew something happened. But this is time I had a good, solid, you know, emotional and you know, psychological base. So I go down there, and he tells me, you know, Stephen, I have some, you know, pressing news to tell you. And I says, you know, is it my grandfather? Is it my grandparents? You know, thinking that they're elderly. And he says, no, it's your father. Your father passed away last night. He had a heart attack. And I remember, you know, for a moment, you know, in disbelief, in shock. Like, my father's too young. He's 53 at this time. How could this happen? But then it's like I had this person talk to me inside of my own head. Rather interesting experience of saying that it's okay. This is okay. There's like, it was supposed to happen. It was weird, and I felt kind of soothed. You know, because knowing that my father, you know, was an alcoholic and an addict, and since he was 17 years old, he's been in active addiction. So you're talking almost 40 years coming. Because my father he was in the Marines when he was younger, going in the tail end of Vietnam. So I know most of the men and women, I don't think there was women at that time, most of the men going through that experience of war, you know, coming back with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, and drinking was the social norm back then. You go into service, you drink. When you're not doing your job, you drink. And you drug. So, knowing that these things and how he was and how he destroyed his body internally, I had a level of acceptance. Even though I was angry and frustrated with him because of, you know, how the productivity I want to say that I was doing in my life now. Even though I was in the penitentiary, I felt some things happening, some powerful dynamics within inside of me that would help me when I leave the penitentiary, and I wanted him to be a part of that. And so I mourned the best of my abilities in the penitentiary.
They let you out to go to services?
I did. I was able to go to the wake for my father. Unfortunate that when I went to the wake, they wouldn't take the cuffs off. Immediately, I wanted to respond in a way that I have before, aggressively, but I said, you know what? I'm grateful that I'm here, and I get to at least touch him, with my hands and kiss him, and say my goodbyes. So I did that. I was only allowed an hour. So I accepted that, and then I, came back to the penitentiary. At this time, I only had 8 more months to finish my term, and those last 8 months were, if not more powerful than the beginning process, was really where I says, you know what? Now I really got something to say. I'm coming from a family who has been dysfunctional, suffered pain. Look at me, how many times I've been incarcerated, gave up my freedom. I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to tell the world and help people, of how to make a difference, and they don't have to deal with this pain. So upon coming home, a struggle that I had to face, losing my grandfather. I was also very close, still very close to my grandmother and grandparents. They were like my second mother and father. Lost him the day after Christmas. And this was difficult to deal with as well, because here I lost my father, and then my grandfather. I don't have any real other men figures that I, in my family that I look up to and respect in that manner. But this was more accepting. My grandfather was 82 years old when he died. He lived a very good life. He was a very good man. Always been a man who worked, never addicted to, any type of substance in that fashion. Maybe he was a workaholic, I don't know, but he grew up and he took care of his family. Mourning, I mourned healthy. I mourned appropriately. I grieved with my family. In a way that I've never done before. And that proved to me that I've learned some skills, and now I can teach these skills to people. Other struggles I've faced since being home from the penitentiary, just dealing with myself, knowing that there's always that demon inside of you, like that demon is the disease of addiction. Knowing that it always festers there. It's like when you're in a penitentiary, you could be an animal. You could be aggressive, caged, predatory animal and be placed in a cell. And even though that animal is placed in a cell, it can still roam freely within inside of that cell, that small little space. And that small little space is the quarters of my mind, which it still festers in there. But through experience, growth, education, and just the sheer motivation to not open the box for that disease to get out and run rampant is what inspires me to keep moving forward, because I know it's always inside. And one thing I've learned is you can never cure this disease. It's always more of a arrested development type of theory. You keep it contained, but every now and then, I have to get out of my own mind, because now with the education that I've learned, with the experience, it could be dangerous in a negative fashion, and I'm very aware of that. So I have a wealth of coping skills today. I got into martial arts, a couple years back, trained, competed, did well. I don't compete anymore. You get up in age, your body doesn't heal as quickly as it does when you're 20. Still train, still exercise with the personal trainer, excellent coping skill, do that, communicate effectively, listen to music. I find myself listening to classical music today. I never thought I would do that 10 years ago. I have a wonderful partner today who I'm engaged to. been with 2 years. We recently purchased a home and got a dog named Duke, who's just a ball full of energy and keeps us on our toes. And we're just today. I live life in a way that I never thought I could. When I was younger, and I know that the people in my family that I've lost are there, in spirit, in heart, and memory. And my goal statement today is to try to help the people that not only come into my office, but to just be a beacon of light, be an inspiration, just to be someone who, if they're struggling, can say, hey, you did it. What did you do? Help me. And I want to be that guy. I want to do what I can. What I would tell somebody who is struggling with the grips of going in and out of the penitentiary, even if they're looking for a way out, I'd say stop running, because really you're only running from yourself. Being in penitentiary is relatively easy, on the count, on the chow, being told what to do all day long, no structure, very minimal responsibility. Stop running, because you can only run so much before you get tired. And I don't mean physically tired, I mean mentally, emotionally, and spiritually tired. Give yourself a chance, reach your hand out, because when you reach your hand out, somebody will grab it, but you got to be willing, you got to be open. First thing, stop the nonsense, stop the BS, because it's not working, especially if you run into a guy like me who you try to run a line on. Ain't working. Been
With
there,
a rifle.
With a rifle. Been there, done that, not working. Give it up. No shucking and jiving around this corner. You gotta be about something. Be about something that's positive. Be about something that's right, because going in and out of the penitentiary, that ain't for a responsible, family-loving man. Nah. It's for people who are afraid, they're cowards, they run from responsibility, and first and foremost, they run from themselves. Be the man or woman that can look in the mirror and say, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to go. Stand up and stop running is what I would tell somebody.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.